Okay, so that's a lot of the fun stuff. Some other important information tonight. We have on the agenda a first read of several of our policies, and really just wanted to highlight the work that's been done here, really based on feedback from families throughout last year, from staff throughout last year, and you all as the board as well. There have been concerns, I think, since before I arrived around our attendance policy. So we have some recommended revisions to that this evening. Our student conduct expectations and reasonable sanctions, that's actually a policy that WASDA no longer recommends. So we'll be recommending to rescind that policy this evening. We also are bringing to you an extremely revised student discipline policy and procedure. And there's some items in here that I'm particularly excited about because I love spreadsheets too. We have a discipline matrix, and so every campus will have the same set of codes, the same definitions for behaviors, the clarity around what consequences are permissible under the law or not, and clarity around what is the role in the classroom of the teacher, and then what is the role of the administrator in the office. So I think this is going to bring some much needed clarity, but also consistency to the district. We also developed the same type of a matrix for attendance, so that will also be cleaned up before we start school this year. We did some additional work around just continuum of discipline responses. This is based on work from the state, and we're going to follow along with what they have recommended as best practice. We have a developed hate and bias incident protocol that was really piloted at View Ridge Middle School last year. So we've done a little bit of revision and had feedback from all of our administrators to roll that out to all staff this fall. We also have a restorative response plan around incidents of bias, which is a resource list for staff around different hate and bias incidents, and then some resources like children's books, video clips to help students to understand why you might not say a particular thing. And then our harassment, intimidation, and bullying form, we had just some minor revisions, but it's called out in that policy, so we did that one too. We have a new social emotional climate policy. We're going to recommend that we adopt that. It goes along with the student discipline policy. They kind of cross-reference each other. And then the one that I'm going to spend a little bit more time talking about this evening is the students and telecommunication devices. And we have significant revisions recommended to this policy and procedure. So as I think folks are aware, given that we had 1,200 responses to our survey in our district of 4,200 children, this is the most we've ever had, more than double. I felt like we had the other one that was the highest response from families was when we talked about the carts at the elementary. And I was like, oh, people really cared about that. It was over 400. People really care about cell phones. What I really did appreciate about this is you can see 70.8% of the respondents are parents, not parents who are staff, just parents who have kids in our system. Another 10.8% are parents who also work for us, and then 12.9% were staff. We had a small number of community members and also students that responded as well. We asked some questions about what do you feel the impact of cell phones, other internet-based devices, and social media have on our youth. The first question asks, you can check anything that applies. There are both positive and negative responses. For example, improved motivation or building technology skills. And then there also are some negative items like reduced academic performance or depression. The same question is asked, but it asked respondents to identify only your top three, just as a way to, again, kind of filter what was important to folks. I know you can't read that, so here's the data for you. The impacts on youth, the items, any item that had more than 50% of people responding, so 600 people or more in our community, identified this as an impact on youth of cell phones, personal devices, and social media. You have the item, the number of people, and then the percentage of respondents. So at the very top was distraction and lack of attention or focus, followed closely by technology addiction, anxiety, and then you can see as it goes down from there. I think it's interesting, if you go about 2/3 of the way down, it says negative impact on peer relationships, 71.6%. We also had the reverse of that. We had positive impact on peer relationships, and people did respond that as well, but it was about 21%. So it's a pretty significant difference there. And then when asked to identify just the top three, again, distraction, lack of attention or focus, and anxiety, as well as increased bullying, harassment, and or intimidation, were the top. And on this one, I just gave you the ones that got 25% or more respondents to select that. We asked some questions specific to grade bands. So which statement best reflects your opinion on cell phone and other device use by elementary students? You can see here the blue, 57.7% basically said elementary students shouldn't have these devices at school. 38.4% said we're okay with them having them, but they should be turned off and away for the entirety of the day. We asked the same question about intermediate and middle level, 5th through 8th grade. In this case, we had 25% of respondents who said they shouldn't even bring them to school. We had 61.3%, a majority who said the middle level kids might need these, but off and away for the day. And then we asked about high school. Only 9% of respondents said high school students should not be able to have these devices at school. 47.7% commented that as long as they were off and away, that was acceptable. We had also 39.5% who said, well, they should be off and away, but kids should be able to use them on breaks and at lunch. We give several options for a general policy recommendation. I've given you kind of the summary tagline here. So no devices, K-12. 9.5% of the respondents, 112 people, that was their selection. No devices for K-8, off and away for high school, 23.1%. Unrestricted for high school, no devices K-8, just 8 respondents. No devices K-6, off and away 712, 23.6%. Very small number again with unrestricted access for secondary. Off and away all grade levels, 22.1%. Off and away with use on breaks, K-12, 13.1%. Off and away K-8, unrestricted high school, 5.8%. And off and away K-6, unrestricted 712, 1.4%. So what I did is I used my math, because you really do use math in life. I just like to point out. So general policy recommendations. So those numbers I just shared with you are on the right side of this screen. People could choose to answer one or all of the questions in the survey. So there were 1,200 respondents, but not everyone answered this prompt. We had 1,180 responses to this specific question. And when you look at all of the different choices, when you look at elementary and intermediate no devices, there were several options that had that as a component. So you'll see the 112, that's the no devices K-12. The 272 is the no devices K-8, off and away for high school. The 8 is the no devices K-8, unrestricted high school. So those are the numbers. I showed my work just like my math teachers taught me to. And so you can see when you add all that up, and if you check the percentages, they do indeed add up to 100%, or 1180 total responses. So at elementary and intermediate, kindergarten through 6th grade at this time, 57.5% said no devices, and that should be our policy. The next closest was off and away all day at 29.4%, which is about half as many people. At the middle school, 7th and 8th grade, by far the most popular selection was off and away all day, again following the same process there. 51.5%, so we did see a majority of respondents with off and away all day for middle. We had 33, so a third of respondents actually said no devices even at middle school. And then you can see the other options there. And at high school, off and away all day was also the top selection at 68.7%. A much smaller percentage of folks who said no devices at the high school level. And then you can see the other items there. So I've bolded for you the one that was sort of the top selection. If this was a levy, all three of these would have passed, I guess I'll put it that way. If it was a bond, we would have only gotten through on the high school. So that's where the data came out at, and I think that's just important for you to know as you consider the first read of these policies this evening. We did also ask an open-ended question, and as has been the trend when I send these surveys out, less than half of people choose to type in their own written response. So 466 responses to that question. The most common type of response was something about a full ban or a stricter policy around cell phones and personal electronic devices, 130 comments. So that's about a third of the people who made written comments. There was also 104 comments around parental communication and student safety, particularly in the case of emergencies. I thought it was important to list some of the emergencies that people shared, such as school shootings, also bus issues and changes in after-school plans. And I'm not sure I would call that an emergency myself, but those were the types of items that were mentioned. We also had a group of comments, 63 comments, around inconsistent enforcement. Particularly, this was focused on the high school. So just really wanting to ensure that if we're going to do something, that we're all going to do it and we're going to do it consistently, which I totally agree with that. There was also some comments about really high school being different than elementary, intermediate, or middle school. There was some questions about what exactly does off and away mean. And then we had a number of responses about smartwatches. There were several comments that called out smartwatches as a major distraction, especially at elementary and middle school. I think our staff are seeing that while parents are less likely to give a cell phone to an elementary child, they will give a smartwatch to a student, which has text capacity and internet access and all kinds of things. And so we heard from staff that that's been a distraction. We also had a handful of people that basically said, but we should not include smartwatches in this policy, and we want the smartwatch because I can track where my student is, their physical location. So I would just wanted to daylight for you that we have mixed feelings about it. But overall, it's 44 people who even discussed it out of the 1,200 that took the survey. There was a few comments about exceptions for medical and special needs, which is written into the draft policy. So for students who have a 504 documented plan or an IEP, an individualized education program plan, where there might be a need, such as a student who has type 1 diabetes and they're tracking their sugars, then we would allow for those items, but it would have to be documented in a conversation with the school. And then a range of community concerns, everything from there's inappropriate content on the school-provided Chromebooks to unhappiness with district communications to use on buses. So it was a kind of a myriad of other items. And then a small number of comments around we shouldn't be banning phones. We should be teaching students how to use them responsibly. That was less than 2% of the respondents who made comments of that nature, that it was a missed opportunity to teach digital citizenship. So I wanted to share that. I thought it was fascinating how many people responded myself. So I think that gives you a good sense of where our community and our staff are at. And again, the largest group of respondents was parents. So, and with that, I will very quickly mention that at the end you can check out, we had framed the article from the groundbreaking from the reflector, and it turned out beautifully, so make sure you get to see that. Just a way to commemorate that celebration. And then I did want to mention this Saturday is our back to school bash down at Davis Park. I'm looking to make sure I'm not giving the wrong information, from 9 to 2. And we have backpacks for Ridgefield School District students who need them. They get to go through and pick out the backpack that they want. We have school supplies for Ridgefield students and for neighboring district students as needed. There's also a ton of school clothes. So if you need support getting school clothes for your student, shoes, haircuts, all the good stuff. So hope to see a lot of our families out there taking advantage of that opportunity. Thank you.